By the way, by the age of 60, 60% of your mitochondria is gone. And no wonder why people die by the age of 80, 90, and it's considered normal, but it's not normal. If you support this structure called mitochondria, you can live long, beautiful, healthy life. Mitochondria lives in our cells. Everything that we have today, your metabolism, your chemical reactions, everything, it's happening inside of your cell. And the purpose of chemical reaction is to build something or destroy and remove from the body. So build blocks of protein, fats, use glucose for that as a building material, or chop it down into small pieces and remove it from the cell. So this is what we call anabolic and catabolic processes. Another name for it is metabolism. But if for all of that, you need what? You need energy. There is a structure in our cell that's responsible for energy production. Without that energy production, none of the reactions in our cells, in our body would happen. So that means the moment the baby was conceived, that growth requires a lot of energy. That comes from that structure called mitochondria. Then the baby is born, and the growth of the body, the growth of the brain and everything else requires lots of energy. That's mitochondria. And then once you're young and healthy, it has to support your muscle work, your brain function, your GI system. All of that requires energy. So that mitochondria lives there. It's a tiny little organism that actually able to multiply. So it lives in your cell. But here's the interesting thing. We already spoke about DNA, right? You got your information from your father and from your mother. And your DNA is the book that tells the whole entire body, not only the color of your skin and your hair and your eyes, but also the way you function, the way your GI digests food, the way your central nervous system digests emotions, the way your muscles work. Certain groups of muscles are stronger than others genetically, right? So all of that information is sitting in your DNA. We already established that. And it's sitting in your nucleus. And we said, this is the governing body. This is the library. This is the book. And the whole entire body listens to it. But there is this entity called mitochondria that has its own DNA. And why is that? Let's go back again. Like we always do, we're going back to evolution of humanity. From the very, very beginning of times when life started on the planet, when the big cell engulfed one of the small cells and was ready to eat it. And then there's something happened. Today, science call it symbiosis. Simply speaking, the small bacteria started talking to a big bacteria and started negotiating and said, let's do this. I'm very vulnerable. I'm a tiny little thing. But if you will protect me and don't digest me, I will produce so much energy. I will bring so much light and power into your space. So you, instead of living 2 weeks, you probably would live 2 months or maybe 2 years. And this is when this symbiotic relationship started. Big bacteria protects mitochondrial membrane, which is so thin and vulnerable. In turn, small bacteria, which is mitochondria, produces lots of energy, and the cell stays alive longer. As a result, evolves, and as a result, here we are, trillions of cells functioning, talking, inventing, living life, thinking, because of this symbiosis. Every living organism today on the planet has mitochondria because of that symbiosis. So now let's just look at our body. Why is it important for us now? Well, if you don't have enough of mitochondria, and by the way, by the age of 60, 60% of your mitochondria is gone. That is physiology. So the idea is to keep the amount of this mitochondria as long as possible. The longer you keep them and the more mitochondria you have in your system, the longer you live and more vitality you have. Because we're not striving to just live longer, but not to enjoy life. We're not talking about living longer and being in diapers somewhere. No, we want to have beautiful, active life. Live 100 plus. but still being active and enjoy life to the fullest. So in that case, if by the age of 60% of my resource and my reserve, my energy reserve is gone. So that means I got only 30, and no wonder why people die by the age of 80, 90, and it's considered normal, but it's not normal. If you support this structure called mitochondria in your system, you can live long, beautiful, healthy life. And today, we live a different life, different awareness about longevity and wellness compared to generation that lived before us. And generation that lived before us, statistically, the lifespan for them was 72 for men and 74, 75 for women. And we're talking about mean. Now it's changed. It's 88. So moving forward with the knowledge that we have today, with the technology that we have today, this age is extending even longer. And now I think 20 years from now, living 100 years and older will be a norm. It's not going to be like, oh my God, she's 100 years old and she looks great. It's going to be a norm to look great at the age of 80, be mobile and doing all these beautiful things and be active and participate in the development of humanity. That's what we're going to. Mitochondria has its own DNA, and it's 37 genes. And each gene, there's 13 proteins that is being produced, and then 24 genes are responsible to support light, to support electricity, to support power, to support metabolism, to support all these things. So that's all it does. It basically gives. Mitochondria was placed in our cells by the contract between these two that it will be giving light, giving joy. So everything that is beautiful and feels good, think about joy, think about lightness, think about laughter, think about all these good things. It's all possible because of mitochondria. If in your DNA you have mutations, good genes or bad genes, in mitochondria you don't have that. You rarely have mutations, and they're usually diseases. So if you have problems with mitochondria, it's mostly because of the problem that was on your maternal side. Why? Because we inherited mitochondria from our mothers only, not fathers. So the information that we have is because of our mother received that from her mother received that from her mother, and that's what we have. And for those who listened to my lectures previously, you guys know that science actually was able to track the tribes when they were migrating, and they were able to recognize that all the mitochondria is actually coming from one mother. And we call it mitochondrial Eve. That's what science calls it. But think about it. Humanity came from one mother. Does it remind you something like in the scripture? We had Eve, right? Or that the function of mitochondria itself, when it just gives, and gives you joy and takes care of you, maternal energy, correct? So everything that we have today and discovering in science, if you really translate into a sacred theology language and go into all these sacred scriptures, you will find these stories and legends that actually talking about this in a different language. So that is the most fascinating thing about mitochondria. The energy of Shakti, which is primordial energy, that then can turn things, nebulous things, into material things. And this is what mitochondria does. It's that chi, what they call it in Chinese medicine. It's that prana, this life force. It's all coming from mitochondria. So we need to make sure that we are paying attention to mitochondria, and not only your DNA. So you check your DNA. We already discovered that. We already spoke about the genetic code in your microbiome, how they talk to each other. And now this is the third part of the triangle is your mitochondria that also has its own code. So these two are talking, and this one, the mitochondria, is giving energy and empowering and giving only light and only goodness. She's the only one who does goodness. These two, they could be bad or good. We already know that. She is good. She is between them saying, okay, guys, how can we make it better? And if these two, which is your DNA and your microbiome, if they not working in harmony and if they're fighting, unfortunately, mitochondria suffers too. And this is what we call aging, when your number of mitochondrial cells start to go down. And unfortunately, we call it normal, but it's not normal. So let's just go over what makes mitochondria unhappy. Chronic stress, for sure. And we're talking about not the stress when you're constantly just fighting, but it could be low grade stress. We're talking boredom. We're talking feeling lonely. We're talking feeling unmotivated. We're talking feeling like not really depressed, but low grade misery, which sometimes we get so used to it, thinking that, well, it is what it is. But this is what mitochondria hates, okay? That's the reason why you feel that way, because you get disconnected. You're not receiving that energy from mitochondria. So what do? We say exercise. Yes, exercise. Any kind of movement, whether you are full fit athletic person or you're not that fit, but you still can do some kind of movements, any kind of movements, you will waken up your mitochondrial function. Fasting, especially if you fast for 36 hours and longer, you will create this autophagy, which is basically programmed killing of specific cells. And mitochondria has that program. So it goes through inventory of her mitochondrial inventory. It goes, okay, this one is dysfunctional, kill, remove. Let's just create a new one. During fasting, that's what happens. Prolonged fasting. You create new mitochondria. And that's why people, when they have fasted, they feel great afterwards. They go, oh my God, day 3, day 4, I feel so much energy. It's because that rush of new mitochondria comes into your cells. And all of a sudden you feel amazing. Red light therapy or any light, sunlight, especially in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, it is so important to spend at least 15 minutes gazing in the sun. Why? Because that awakens your mitochondria. That is the healthiest thing that you can do. What makes it worse if you wake up and you're in a dark space and all you have artificial light? The artificial light is not good for us. This is when you are not promoting, not stimulating your mitochondria. Breath work, especially breath work when you put your body in the position when you have lots of oxygen and then no oxygen, lots of oxygen and then no oxygen. You create this calibration in your body between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. You do that. But at the same time, you also stimulate new mitochondrial production and you recharge mitochondria. So what else? Methylene blue. Usually I do 20 drops of methylene blue in the morning and then go outside and get some sun. That's the best thing you can do for your mitochondria. Vitamins, of course, you're going to have vitamin D, which is the main supporter of mitochondria. You need to have vitamin C, which is also a very big supporter of mitochondria, and vitamin A. These are 3 good supporters. Peptides. There are specific peptides, and you ask me which one of them. The best supporters for mitochondria are 2 peptides today that we have on the market, which is pretty good and they're well studied. One of them called SS31, and the other one called MOTS-C, MOTS-C. So SS31, what it does, it repairs that vulnerable layer of mitochondria. Remember, she has a very, very thin layer. She's barely protected. So that's what SS31 does. And Matzi is the guy who can go inside of mitochondria. It's the only one that is allowed to go into sacred space of mitochondria where DNA is located and go and repair it. That's what Matzi does. So that's why Matzi and SS31, every time, if you guys into peptides, if you hear these names, these are basically, we use them like water in longevity medicine. Another thing is very, very important to bring precursors of energy, which is NAD. A lot of you ask for NAD, and there's a lot of articles in longevity field that they talk about NAD being a fountain of youth. Why is that? NAD is a building material that mitochondria uses to create an electrons, which is your energy. Okay, so it's a precursor. So when you take NAD, you're giving your mitochondria raw material to create energy. That's why it's so popular. One thing that I was going to also talk about, very interesting thing that right now it's not popular, nobody talks about it. It's not big yet, but it will be. It's called easy water, exclusion water. That's what it is. So unlike the regular water that we drink and we have in our body in the form of liquid, this particular water is in the form of gel. The function of this water in our cells to keep the charge of our cell. We have a charge. If I would put electrodes in your body will read your heart, we call it EKG, will read your brain, we call it EEG, and we can read other organs only because each organ produces its own frequency in the form of electricity. And mitochondria is the one that creates easy water, and easy water sits at the surface of the cell, your cell, and charges it. The healthy charge is negative, minus. Okay, I know we say negative energy is a bad energy, but in the cell, physiologically, minus 80 is actually good. Minus 20 is not good. Okay, so the millivoltage of the cells changes as we age. When you are born, when you are healthy, beautiful baby, if someone would check your voltage of your cells at the time, it's around 80, minus 80 millivolts. As you grow older, you get exposed to toxins, alcohol, processed foods, chronic stress, aging, your voltage starts to go down. And physiologically, by the age of 50, your voltage is around 50. But if there's more problems and toxins in your body, your voltage goes all the way to minus 30. This is when chronic diseases start to show. And once the voltage gets to minus 20, this is when things like cancer start to develop. All right? So the idea is to keep your voltage minus 70 to minus 80. And there are different ways of doing this. But who's responsible for that voltage? Mitochondria. You ask me how to change the charge of mitochondria. From the external, what we have today, there is a system, and those who go to my office, you guys know, E system, energy enhancement system. This is exactly what it does. And with that particular system, there was a study when they checked the charge of the cells before, and then in 1 hour, they checked the charge in 1 hour, and they saw it doesn't matter where you at in your charge, whether you're minus 20, minus 30, minus 50, in 1 hour, everybody becomes minus 80, which is perfect. So this is one way of doing it. Other ways of increasing your charge is fasting, prolonged fasting, and breath work. Breath work does that too. Someone asked me why women only have mitochondria. Does it make us special? And I'm going to burst that bubble right now, because when we say like, of course, it's just women, we are so special, and poor man is like, what about us? So guys, I'll explain. So when the egg meets the sperm, and there's a lot of the sperms, and then there's like one egg. So a million sperm is trying to go fast and get into that egg. There's a lot of competition, okay? A lot of competition requires a lot of energy. So sperm, when it's active, when it's trying to get into the egg, has its mitochondria. So the more mitochondria that particular cell has, the more chances for success that guy has. Okay? So finally, one guy makes to the finish line, uses all his mitochondria, all his resources, aka money, power, everything that he has. He gives everything just to enter that egg. Okay? So you guys sacrifice everything you got so to enter, and then together to create life on the planet. It's actually a very, very beautiful process if you look at it. So that's why I said that, and probably a feminist probably not gonna like it, but it is what it is, guys. It's a physiology, it's a science, and I think it's beautiful. And that will teach us to respect both genders, because we need each other. That's another story to say how important to have divine feminine and divine masculine, how they work together in harmony. Yes. And then once the sperm goes in, that cell becomes more cells and becomes life. And now the mitochondria that sits inside of that egg, now she gives energy for the rest of the being's lives and supports and helps. Okay. So it's very poetic. It's very beautiful. So you better make good friends with your mitochondria, and you better guard that mitochondria for the rest of your life, because she's the one who determines how well and how healthy and how long you will live on this planet. So mitochondria is really one of the miraculous things that was given to us by God. It's a beautiful, beautiful gift. And that's why I call it mitochondria, because it's not just a powerhouse that we all call it. It has a very deep meaning. Love you all, and we will regroup next week. Bye-bye.